Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of Planted on Earth. My name's Sam Peters, I'm one of the co-founders of Planted, the first contemporary design show aimed at reconnecting cities with nature. Lisa, perhaps if I start with you, could you tell us a little bit about HagenHinderdael and how it came about, and then Sofia afterwards, I'll maybe chat to you about Eden and a little bit of the origins. But maybe first of all, Lisa, how did you guys meet? How did you work together, and what are you up to at the moment?
Sure, so we started in June of this year officially together, but we have worked together for many years. At Design House Liberty, we were both partners. Sofia was design partner at operations, and we found that our skill sets really aligned. So when we both went to go do our own companies, I was very interested in lighting design, Sofia more specifically in installation design, and then I went traveling, came back to London, and we said, you know what, let's do this competition together. And it went so well, and we said, you know what, why don't we start this business together? And what we found is we're actually both very interested in sustainability, immersive environments, kind of this idea that everything has an afterlife. So that's where the whole company kind of began.
Amazing. And Sofia, we were talking about Eden, and that's why you're here today, and you guys are showcasing Eden on our online showcase. In fact, you're on the website now on www.planted-cities.co.uk, so go and check it out. But could you tell us a little bit about that project? It's getting a lot of attention at the moment, and rightly so.
Yeah, so Eden started early this year. We got approached by Grosvenor. Initially, it was only me. It was meant to go up for Earth Day in Belgravia in the Halkin Arcade. And like Lisa said, we were both in an architecture firm. We have architectural backgrounds. So the whole approach was, let's look at the site and not just put an installation somewhere. The brief was sustainability, anything with sustainability. So, well, I don't know, so many artists do something with plastic bottles, whatnot. But actually, when you look further into the site and its context, you'll see that the Halkin Arcade is called the Secret Garden of Belgravia. And that immediately helps you, okay, secret gardens, that's about urban forestry. Why not do something about the green lungs of the city and the importance of like a healthy natural environment on our well-being, and also the reconnection to nature. So once you reconnect with nature and care about it, nature will care for you. So nature has always been our support system, but we have lost that in our industrialized urban context these days. So even long before the pandemic, we dealt with the topic of, you know, the importance of your nature, and once you start nourishing it, it will nourish you. And this brings us back to the sustainable aspect, and Eden is fully sustainable within its design. So it's a three-dimensional spiral created of modular planters that are made of reclaimed timber from construction sites. Okay. They all would have ended up in landfill, but it's all nicely prepped and stained and can last forever now. Wow. And also it can stay in its configuration as it is now or be repurposed in any other configuration because it's modular. And the spiral houses a micro ecosystem of biodiversity. So it's like a garden within the garden of the Halkin Arcade, gradually growing from grass to shrubs to trees. And when you sit there, you're like immersed within an urban forest. And there are mirrors within Eden, which also educate you. So you can sit there and read about different facts, scientific or psychological or from literature, the importance of nature on your well-being, mental as well as physical. And it's interactive because we wanted people to take something away and, you know, to emphasize that you need to engage with nature. The best thing to do is just plant seeds, make your own nature, create your own biodiversity in your home or balcony. So people can either take away some seeds or they plant it in a central planter, and they start growing now already actually.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about if you reconnect with nature, that it nurtures you in return. This whole idea of planting your own garden, sustainable kind of methodology, and especially now in the pandemic, everybody's trying to get out and be in gardens and green space. I come from an urban design background, so I did a lot of research about, you know, London claims to have so many green spaces, but actually so many of the spaces are closed off. Right. So that, you know, unless you live in that square, you can't actually use it. So I think there's quite something special about having your own space you can go to.
That's a really interesting point, and I mean, talking about the pandemic and access to nature, you're so right. You know, London has it sells itself pretty well on that, and there are some fantastic spaces. We're here in King's Cross, which feels very empathetic and very connected to nature, and in some ways it's an example of what you can do with a post-industrial cityscape. This place used to be pretty average, but now it's obviously been made to look really beautiful, and hopefully that will continue, and more will come in. But Lisa, I mean, as an architect and someone with a background in urban development, I mean, how do we maintain this sort of movement towards connecting with nature, and how do we open up some of those spaces that are closed off, as you described?
I think it's a lot about educating people
Yep.
about the importance of nature. I think we know it, so when we travel, we try to seek out places of nature. We'll go to the Lake District, Peak District, all these places that are across the UK. But when you come back to the city, you kind of lose that immediately, and you're back into your work. Work. And so I just think it's a lot about the developers also educating themselves and creating this narrative that, you know, this is the new destination to feel safe for your mental well-being. You can come into your garden space. I think everyone now is seeking housing with gardens. So a lot of these kind of one-bed flats that don't have garden space are not selling. So I think there's a whole thing about maybe even roof terraces, because we don't have much space on the ground itself. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do.
And the beautiful thing about that too is, like, we are seeking more green spaces, we are creating more, and I think, like Lisa said, this will happen more and more, and they'll be more publicly accessible. But that also brings us back, it closes the circle, because we're going to create more nature, we're actually going to look after it more, and it will help our environment in terms of, you know, the air quality, pollution, etc., global warming. It has a knock-on effect on our whole environment. So it's good that people recognized it, that, you know, this makes me feel good. Like in Japan, they do forest bathing. Doctors prescribe it as a therapy to people. 15 minutes are enough, but ideally 2 hours. Just have a soak in a forest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a park.
And even hospitals are looking at how they can make spaces more green, always give you views of nature, because it's so important for your therapy and well-being.
Yeah, and you heal faster. Just the view of trees actually increases your healing as well.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to Eden, we talked about it before, but I mean, is that a project that you would like to see, like to do again? Is that something that you could, you know, will everyone will see some of the pictures and the beautiful natural creation that you've made and the sustainable creation that you've made? But I mean, is that, as I say, is that something you can see developing in the future?
Yes, I definitely think its modular design means that we can expand. So it wouldn't just be in Halkin Arcade. We can do one here in Granary Square. We could do one on the waterfront, anywhere really. And I just think that's quite important when you design as well, that you have something that can be kind of repurposed and rebuilt and spread the love, so to speak.
Absolutely. Sofia, you're from Austria, so we were talking before about the sort of a more balanced existence that people perhaps have, where work isn't so dominant. I mean, lots of people, I'm suddenly thinking about going to a 4-day week permanently, although I haven't told my business partners yet.
You have it on record
It is now, I've told them now, so sorry. But I mean, I think what I've tried to understand over time is that actually, if you enable that recuperation and rest and that time in nature, I've always felt much more energized afterwards. So actually I can produce exactly the same amount of work, if not more, and be more creative if I've given myself that space rather than just go at it all the time. I mean, is that something that you've experienced in Austria? You feel like that balance is just better?
I think the balance is definitely better, but then also Austria has, like, all of Austria is the population of London.
Sure, yeah. So you've got space.
There's space, and most of it is mountains.
Yes.
And you are just much more connected to nature. Like on weekends, everyone goes on hikes because they're just there. When I'm home, every morning I just hike up a mountain to a forest. Like, it sounds very idyllic, cheesy, but it kind of is.
Yeah, right.
And quality of life is very important. So people take their time. They slow down. They are much slower than here. When they come visit London, they're like, why is everyone so stressed? And obviously it's exciting to have this vibe and dynamic of London, but I think there needs to be a fine line because it burns all of us out and it burns out our environment. So it's important to bring back a little bit of nature within our urban dwellings as much as we can for both sides.
And that idea that quality of life indeed is related to your ability to access nature.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about that.
I mean, do you feel like we talked about when you travel away that you
Yeah.
you go to the Peak District or the Lake District, all these beautiful places, but if you're, you know, I'm just trying to explore this idea that if you associate quality of life with your ability to be around the natural world, is that a fair comment?
Yeah. The nice thing with Eden, for example, it's a small scale version of that because it is modular. It can be applied within any configuration. It can be larger or smaller, and it's accessible for public. So if we can produce more of those within the city and they fit the urban context and the surroundings, so people actually feel well in it and they can immerse themselves in it. That's like a small step to have more projects similar to that happen around London, around the city.
And is it something you could put in your home perhaps as well? Is that an idea that you could put it in the garden? And
Yes, so the kind of the modular planters, you could take one and put it on your balcony or in your garden, or actually what you're supposed to do is take the seeds themselves, take them home and create your own garden or your own mini Eden, as we call it.
Amazing, yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to speak to you both, Sofia and Lisa. Thank you. You know, good luck with the project. We absolutely love it at Planted, and it's been absolutely fantastic to have you both on today. So thanks for your time and good luck.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of Planted Unearthed. My name's Sam Peters. I'm one of the co-founders of Planted, the first contemporary design show aimed at reconnecting cities with nature. Anna, welcome to Planted. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As I said to you before, you've passed the Deborah Spencer Design Eye Test, which is a very strict test. It's a great accolade for Horticus Living. And could you tell us a little bit about Horticus Living and what is it that your business does and the products that you produce?
Yes, so our product is a modular living wall. So it basically allows you to create your own living wall to fit your space. Our basic unit, which is rather small, starts in a honeycomb shape, and you have 3 cells, and you can fit 3 terracotta planters into it. And then from then on, you can add as many plants as you like and grow it in any direction that you like. So it's really sort of organic way of approaching living walls rather than a sort of this fantastic impactful thing. You can grow it at your own pace.
Okay.
So you can just have a few plants, start with maybe 5 or 6 plants, or maybe even 3, and then slowly, as you get more confident, you can add more. But also we're working on extra features to add a little bit more of sort of comfort items to it, like speakers and lighting and humidifiers, so that you can integrate it as part of your living wall, but also have it as part of your life, because we do have these little bits in our home. But the main aim behind it was about regaining the floor space. Plants have overtaken our lives again. It's a resurgence from the 70s. But our living space is actually shrinking. Average home is 46 square meters. So according to Reba, so it's not really big, and it's a great way, but we have loads of walls, so it's a great way to introduce greenery and life back into our home, and that was sort of how we started.
That's a really interesting concept. Yeah, of course, rather than